I have been able to read minds since I was a child. To suppress this ability, I always wear prayer beads on my wrist. Only through physical contact do I lose control and hear others' thoughts. Because of this, I constantly remind myself that I dislike being touched. At school, people often say I'm cold and distant. When Jessica Carter leaned in, I was caught off guard, and she grabbed me just like that. "Sophia, isn't math your weak subject? Come over to my place tonight. I'll tutor you." Her voice was loud, startling me. The two of us never really got along. She thought I was arrogant and pretentious, and I thought she was stubborn and impossible to communicate with. Since the semester started, we had barely exchanged a few words. Even when teachers subtly hinted for us to help each other, we tacitly ignored it. And now, with her suddenly grabbing me, I instinctively recoiled. I was about to pry her hand away until I heard her laughter. Yes, I actually got a second chance at life. This time, I'm gonna make that scumbag and that bitch pay. Didn't Ethan Lewis like Sophia Taylor? Then I'll give him the chance to have her. I'll invite both of them to my house and then find an excuse to leave. A guy and a girl alone in a room, huh? When the time comes, I'll jump in at just the right moment. Once I have dirt on them, they'll be under my control. What's so special about Sophia Taylor that she keeps seducing people? Other than her face, she has no redeeming qualities. Men are so shallow. I can't wait to see how disgusting the two of them will be together. I was so stunned by this flood of thoughts that I couldn't speak. Even my hand froze in place. Jessica Carter's eyes were filled with unmistakable malice, sending a chill down my spine. But her thoughts didn't stop. Damn it, why isn't she reacting? Sophia Taylor, acting all high and mighty. She's nothing but a pretty face. A few hundred years ago, she would have been nothing but a lowly performer. Let me think. Should I post her photos on the school forum? Or better yet, put them online for the whole world to see? In my last life, she was already married, yet she still had Ethan Lewis wrapped around her finger. I should just ruin that pretty face of hers. After the initial shock, I quickly calmed down. I silently looked at Jessica Carter. I never understood why she hated me so much. She was a transfer student. When she first arrived, she barely spoke, always keeping her head down. Her uniform was dirty. Within a few days, her deskmate publicly requested a seat change, claiming Jessica had a weird smell. I remembered how tightly she gripped her books. During a break, I found the teacher and became her new deskmate. The girls in our class didn't like her. Then again, they didn't like me either. Unlike the other girls, I didn't hold hands with anyone to the bathroom. I refused all bestie friendships. I wasn't outright ostracized like Jessica, but I never had any friends either. At the time, I thought, well, a misfit sitting with another misfit made sense. But the moment I politely told Jessica that I disliked physical contact, she didn't say anything. She just glared at me with an unusual anger in her eyes. From that day on, a clear boundary line was drawn across our desk. Neither of us spoke to each other again. But what baffled me the most was, who was Ethan Lewis? How did I get involved with him? Why was I suddenly being handed his unwanted trash? Did Jessica think I was some pathetic pushover? After school, Jessica was acting strangely. She persistently followed me, even when I made it clear I had no interest in going to her house. "Jessica, I never invite people over. Stop following me, it's rude." I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, resentment. A moment later, her eyes welled up with tears. "Why, Sophia? Do you really dislike me that much? I didn't mean any harm. No one at school wants to be friends with me. But back then, you sat with me. I thought. This Jessica was completely different from before. She had always been full of negativity, but she had her pride. She had never used this kind of pitiful act before. It didn't take long for me to understand. This must have been something she learned from her past life. She was trying to guilt-trip me, to corner me into saying yes. After all, high school girls were easily embarrassed. Normally, people like me would be overshadowed by a reborn girl like her. Too bad for her, she ran into me. Ever since I was young, I've heard too many thoughts, kind ones, malicious ones, an endless mix of emotions and intentions. It made me understand human nature earlier than most, and in turn, made me more detached, almost like a cold-hearted adult. So I didn't hesitate to reject her. But you were the one who drew the boundary line first. You were the one who wanted nothing to do with me. If you want to come to my house, It's not impossible, but you have to ask in advance. I need to check my schedule and inform my family. You can't just decide last minute and expect me to go along with it. I didn't understand why simply rejecting her sudden invitation to my house made her start crying. We were seniors in high school. This was the time to focus on studying. Whatever she was trying to do, she knew it herself. I really didn't have the time to play along. Jessica Carter stiffened. Her little performance had already drawn the attention of several classmates who hadn't left yet. Someone chuckled under their breath, making her face flush even redder. I didn't need to hear her thoughts to know what she was thinking. Without another word, I turned and walked away, until a boy suddenly blocked my path. Sweat covered his forehead, his legs were trembling with nerves, but the words that came out of his mouth weren't exactly pleasant. "Don't be mad, Sophia. Jessica didn't mean it. I'm apologizing on her behalf. She just wants to be friends with you." After saying those 2 sentences, it was as if he had exhausted all his courage. He fell silent, lowering his head. He didn't even notice Jessica stepping up behind him. I realized instantly who he was. Ethan Lewis. The same Ethan Lewis that Jessica had mentioned in her past life memories. The guy who supposedly hurt her. So this was her plan all along, stalling for time to let him catch up and confess to me. Sure enough, in the next second, Jessica pulled out a love letter and shoved it into his hands. "Ethan, didn't you want to confess to Sophia Taylor? You have to do it yourself if you want it to be sincere. Our school's beauty queen is actually very approachable. Go on." "Really? I'm approachable? That's news to me." I looked at Ethan Lewis, the so-called terrible scumbag from Jessica's thoughts, and frowned slightly in confusion. He looked ordinary. If I had to describe him in one word, it would be average. Not that I found him disgusting or looked down on him, he was just awkward and hesitant, standing there gripping the love letter, completely lost on what to do. Even when Jessica bluntly exposed his feelings, he still seemed unsure, like he had no idea how to react. His appearance was forgettable, just a typical high school boy. Unkempt, his uniform not exactly clean, his collar lopsided. Then it hit me. I had heard his name before. He was one of the top 3 students in our grade. Someone the teachers often praised. But I never had a thing for academic stars. Even if I ignored whatever wrongs he might have done to Jessica in the past, the fact that he jumped out of nowhere, just to apologize on her behalf without knowing the full story, was already enough to make me lose interest. So why exactly did Jessica insist on tying our names together in her thoughts? Ethan was clearly too much of a coward to make a move, and since I wasn't reacting, Jessica finally lost patience. She snatched the love letter and shoved it into my hands. "Sophia, Ethan is a genius. So many girls in school like him. If you pass up this chance, you won't get another." The moment our hands touched, I heard her thoughts again. Good. Now that Ethan has successfully confessed, I've already changed what happened in my last life. This time, I won't meddle in things that don't concern me. Lucky Sophia. Even Ethan never confessed to me. In my past life, I washed his clothes, cooked for him, bore his child, and in the end all I got was a cold, "We're just suitable for each other." This time, I'll make them settle their relationship right here, in front of everyone. I'd like to see how Sophia still manages to seduce Michael Collins and get him to fund her company. Michael Collins? Jessica's voice in my head continued. Michael is an old childhood friend of mine. That guy is nothing but a rich second-generation slacker, just like me. We're the type of people everyone in our social circle sees as hopeless cases. We only ever saw each other as brothers. Just the thought of anything else gives me chills. Jessica thought I had seduced Michael Collins? Hearing this, I suddenly doubted how reliable her so-called memories really were. My gaze returned to Ethan Lewis. Because of Jessica Carter's words, his face turned even redder, a faint trace of expectation in his expression. Strange, what exactly was he hoping for? "So, you're saying that just because he's a top student, I'm supposed to start dating a complete stranger without knowing anything about him? Or is it because you, Jessica Carter, think he's a good person, that you like him, and therefore I have no reason to refuse, since he has graciously lowered himself to confess to me?" Jessica was momentarily stunned by my questions. She instinctively turned to look at Ethan and quickly denied it. "No, we're just friends. I don't like Ethan Lewis, don't say nonsense. Am I the one saying nonsense? Then why are you forcing him to confess in public? And why does everything you say imply that I have to accept it? Jessica Carter? Are we even that close? A rapid series of questions completely threw Jessica off. She took a few hurried steps back, creating distance between herself and Ethan, as if afraid of being associated with him, afraid of repeating past mistakes. Almost immediately, she spun around and ran off, leaving Ethan standing there alone at the center of attention. A few scattered laughs broke the awkward silence. Ha, poor guy. Not only did he fail to win over the school beauty, even his little fangirl ditched him. Jessica used to bring breakfast for Ethan all the time. I thought they were a couple. Guess not. He already said before that he wasn't interested in Jessica. But don't you think Sophia was a little too harsh in rejecting him like that? Oh? So you're saying as long as someone with good grades confesses, the school beauty has to accept? Come on, Ethan is only third place in the rankings. They're still first and second. Should she date them too? I glanced at Ethan and gave him a calm, polite smile. My voice was soft but firm. You might be a very outstanding person, but I believe the foundation of a relationship is mutual understanding and trust. So I'm sorry, I can't accept your confession. I hope next time you won't use this kind of approach again. I continued. Just like you said, Jessica has been clinging to me all day, crying, making a scene. Anyone who didn't know better would think I was bullying her. Honestly, it's been quite troublesome for me. It's just a confession. Why are they making it seem so dramatic? Someone muttered in the background. After that day, Jessica Carter became noticeably more reserved, but Ethan Lewis, he was like a man on a mission. He kept showing up at my class constantly. Who knows what kind of conversation he and Jessica had in private, but now he had started openly pursuing me. Every time he appeared, he would bring snacks or drinks. Sophia, I've been thinking seriously about what you said before. If we want a long-term relationship, we do need to take the time to get to know each other first. Today, someone told me that girls like spicy snacks and fruit jellies. I wasn't sure which ones you liked, so I just bought everything from the convenience store. Try some. As he spoke, he handed me a plastic bag. I glanced inside. Spicy chicken sticks, fruit jellies. Yep, he really did buy out the whole snack aisle. The classroom immediately erupted into cheers and teasing remarks. Even the class discipline monitor couldn't control the commotion. It wasn't that they necessarily wanted me to accept Ethan's confession. It was just that senior year was dull, and people were desperate for some gossip to liven things up. I put down my pen and looked up at him. I don't eat snacks. Sophia, just take them. Don't worry, I won't think you're materialistic. Ethan, as if suffering from some kind of cognitive malfunction, completely ignored what I had said. Instead, he looked deeply moved and tried to shove the snacks into my arms. Before he could, another hand reached in and intercepted him mid-action. It was Michael Collins, my unreliable childhood friend. He grabbed Ethan's wrist and smoothly redirected all the snacks into Jessica Carter's arms. Dude, come on. She already said she doesn't eat snacks. You bought them, so just give them to someone who actually wants them. Michael leaned back lazily and added, Sophia is a dancer. She's had to control her weight since she was little. Gaining even a pound gets her scolded. Don't go ruining her diet. Ethan froze, staring at Michael with immediate suspicion, as if suddenly seeing him as a romantic rival. Michael, on the other hand, remained completely unfazed. He plopped himself down on my desk and in front of the entire class casually said, Hey Sophia, our families are old friends. Why don't we just be deskmates? Michael Collins smirked as he leaned lazily against my desk. You sure are getting a lot of attention from your new seatmate. Who even tries to set people up for a high school romance in senior year? Just hold out for a bit. If you really have to date, save it for college. Jessica Carter, still clutching the snacks, was doing everything she could to avoid making eye contact with Ethan Lewis. But now, thanks to Michael's blunt comment, her face turned bright red. Stop talking nonsense, she snapped. Sophia's grades are terrible. There's no way they'd end up at the same college. As if suddenly realizing something, she shoved the snacks back into my hands and said eagerly, If you're with Ethan, he can tutor you. Sophia, I'm doing this for your own good. Why do you always misunderstand me? She pouted, looking as pitiful as possible. But just moments ago, I had clearly heard her thoughts. Guys like Michael Collins must be into those stubborn, independent, pure-hearted girls. If I can win him over, let's see how arrogant Sophia Taylor can still be. Maybe I'll be the one to debut as a star instead of her. I almost wanted to laugh. Jessica, you're overthinking things. Michael Collins likes bold, glamorous women. The one thing he absolutely cannot stand is a girl who cries at every little thing. Ethan Lewis, on the other hand, was different. Seeing Jessica cry seemed to stir something in him. He patted her shoulder and said solemnly, "Thank you, my good friend. I appreciate the thought. Don't worry about school. I can afford to skip a couple of questions to spend more time with Sophia." Then, as if he was delivering the most romantic declaration in the world, he turned to me with what he must have thought was a deep, meaningful gaze. Unfortunately, it just came off as greasy and overconfident. Michael Collins didn't even give him a chance to continue. He stepped right in front of him and rolled his eyes dramatically. "Tutoring? Skipping a couple of questions? Do you even know who you're talking about? Sophia Taylor has already secured early admission. Do you really think she needs your help?" Ethan froze. Michael continued. "She won nationals for traditional dance. She got a special offer from an elite arts academy. If you want to attend the same school as her, you'd better start stretching now. Maybe if you practice your backbends and splits from today, you'll stand a chance. Sure, you're a bit old for it, but hey, love is all about sacrifice, right?" Then, with an exaggerated sense of finality, Michael tapped twice on my desk, signaling it was time for me to step in and smooth things over. I leaned forward slightly, smiling at the two miserable-looking people in front of me. "Sorry, I'm focused on preparing for my next competition. I have no plans to date anyone. I'm perfectly fine being single. Crazy people, please leave me alone." Michael and I have had a mutual understanding since we were kids. Whenever one of us ran into trouble, the other would step in, deflect the issue, and then let the victim wrap things up gracefully. This way, we avoided unnecessary drama while still coming out looking good. It was a skill I had learned from watching the adults around me. And since we were still young, it worked every single time. Eventually, though, our parents caught on. I still remember the way they'd scoff at each other. "Oh wow, your daughter is just as selfish as you. Look who's talking. She's exactly like you, always scheming, always playing mind games." The only one who never turned on me was Michael Collins. He stuck to his ridiculous, over-the-top praise no matter what. "Sophia, you're the best person in the world. Sophia, they just don't have good taste. If you ask me, no one on this planet is more noble than you." I had no words. I kicked him and reminded him, "I'm a woman, Michael." But Michael was never short on nonsense. "So what? Women can't be noble? In my eyes, you are the definition of nobility. You have mind-reading powers, but you never use them to manipulate people. You even try to suppress them. Who else could resist that kind of temptation? If it were me, I'd have stolen my dad's safe password on day one." Then he'd dramatically hold out his hand. "Don't believe me? Go ahead and touch me. Read my mind." Michael always had a way of making people feel touched, though never for more than 3 seconds at a time. Just like now. He followed me home after school, grinning like an idiot. The moment he stepped inside, he threw himself onto the couch, grabbing a game controller. "Sophia, you're my favorite person in the world. Your place is the best. I can actually relax here. Don't worry about food. If I get hungry, I'll just order takeout." I couldn't stand how carefree he looked, so I lifted my foot and kicked him. "Get lost and go back to your own house." Michael Collins immediately jumped up and clung to my leg, wailing dramatically. "No, Sophia. The moment I go home, they'll force me to study. I'll suffocate to death." The Collins family had a strong background. Since he was a kid, Michael's schedule had been packed with various courses, and he aced every single one of them. But the older he got, the more rebellious he became. He started openly going against his parents, constantly pulling stunts like running away from home just to avoid studying. I looked down at his messy-haired head and suddenly thought of Jessica Carter's mind-reading confession. Without much thought, I asked, "Michael, if you were to start an entertainment company, what would you do?" "Obviously, I'd make you famous, Sophia. Then I'd use the money you earn to chase girls." Figures, I knew it. Hearing that, I finally felt reassured. So it really was just Jessica's one-sided delusion. Michael and I were still nothing more than the classic dynamic of a queen and her loyal minion. I ignored him and headed upstairs to my dance studio for practice. My phone kept buzzing on the table, notifications flooding in. I didn't check a single one. Back at school, Michael and I had always kept a low profile. We never flaunted our backgrounds, nor had I ever told anyone that I studied dance. But now it was as if they had uncovered some explosive gossip. Everyone with my contact information was messaging me. Those who didn't have me on WeChat were tagging me in group chats, spamming my name left and right. Annoying. Unfortunately, I had a self-destructive tendency. I never put my phone on silent. Or maybe I just liked training myself to focus despite distractions. By the time I finished practicing, Michael was standing at the door, holding up his phone with an innocent expression. Good news or bad news first? I grabbed a towel and wiped my sweat. Bad news. You're famous again. Ethan Lewis tried to kill himself because you rejected him. He caused such a scene that the fire department had to be called. I raised an eyebrow. And the good news? You didn't check your phone. He made a fuss for hours but got no reaction from you, so he finally gave up and climbed down by himself. Michael paused for dramatic effect before adding, "Oh, and there's a neutral but still kind of bad news. Ethan's parents found out about everything. Now they're demanding that the school expel you. Apparently, even reporters are getting involved." He smirked. So, good or bad, guess it depends on how you look at it. For a dancer, fame could be both a blessing and a curse. If this happened before a competition, it could bring massive public attention, which might boost exposure, but would also make the judges more critical. Still, I had known exactly what I wanted since I was young. With or without my mind-reading abilities, I had been training relentlessly for this. A solid foundation was my best shield against scrutiny. I tossed my towel aside and didn't answer Michael right away. So Ethan was threatening suicide just because I wouldn't date him? This kind of moral blackmail felt a little too familiar. It was Jessica Carter's style. She seemed convinced that the only way to escape her miserable past life was to completely shove Ethan onto me, like I was some sort of garbage bin for her problems. But why? He had so many other choices. Why did changing his life have to mean dragging someone else down with him? I didn't even know Ethan Lewis before this. Why was I supposed to be responsible for him now? Not long after, the trending search term, "top student attempts suicide for love," shot to the top of social media. Ethan himself never made a public appearance, but his parents were front and center, dragging Jessica Carter along as they wiped their tears in front of the cameras. "Our son has always been a good boy," his mother sobbed. "He studies until 2 a.m. every day and never gives us any trouble. But that girl, God knows what kind of tricks she used to enchant our son. She even made him steal money to buy her snacks." She pointed at the camera, her voice full of righteous fury. "Senior year is the most crucial time for students. The school must punish this. Girls like her, who don't care about studying and only know how to dress up and seduce boys, should be expelled." Online, plenty of parents with high school kids eagerly chimed in, practically foaming at the mouth. "Witchcraft. She's bewitching innocent boys. My son better not fall for a girl like this. Why don't they blame their own son instead? Maybe try raising him properly?" Jessica, on the other hand, was putting on an entirely different act. She had even done her makeup specifically for the camera. Every time the lens panned to her, she lowered her head and let out a soft, sorrowful sigh. "It's all my fault," she whispered, her voice trembling as tears welled up in her eyes. "Ethan and I are good friends, and I should have tried harder to stop him." Then, as if delivering the final stab, she added with a tragic expression, "Sophia Taylor is the school beauty. She always has a lot of boys around her. It's understandable that she wouldn't like Ethan. I didn't think she was that kind of girl." With that, she threw a lit match into a room full of gasoline. The parents online exploded with even more outrage, attacking me with renewed vigor. Ethan Lewis's parents and Jessica Carter were basking in the attention they gained from the scandal. His parents even started a social media account, enthusiastically sharing their parenting insights as if they were model guardians. Meanwhile, Jessica, though receiving mixed reactions, some calling her manipulative, others sympathizing with her, still managed to attract a wave of devoted followers. Now, she wasn't even bothering to come to school anymore. Even I found it a bit strange. Did she really think she could rely solely on her past life memories to get into college? Skipping classes in senior year was definitely not a smart move. Out of the three of them, Ethan was the only one who wasn't doing well. Although the media had started calling him a future elite student, his reputation at school took a nosedive. He used to play the role of a genius who never needed to study, boasting that he never reviewed his notes at home. But now, his own parents had publicly contradicted him, exposing the truth. People started mocking him, calling him a sore loser who couldn't handle rejection. Overnight, all his so-called friends abandoned him. Even at lunch, he sat alone. No one wanted to share a table with him. If some of his classmates had felt a little sympathy when he first threatened suicide, that quickly turned into wariness after his parents took over the narrative. After all, who knew when he might try pulling another stunt? The safest choice was to keep their distance. Ethan was too prideful to endure it for long. Not even a week passed before he couldn't take it anymore. He started skipping class, following Jessica around. According to Michael Collins, the two of them had become inseparable. In the past, Jessica had been the one chasing after Ethan like a devoted fangirl. Now, the roles had reversed. Ethan trailed after her like a lost puppy, tagging along wherever she went. The two of them spent their time skipping school, running around looking for places to stream live broadcasts. Curious, I clicked into one of their streams. Jessica had completely changed her look. She was wearing an off-shoulder dress, her hair now dyed blonde and curled into waves. Smiling sweetly at the camera, she thanked viewers for their donations. Someone asked about her age, and she let out a helpless sigh. Yeah, I've always been more mature than my peers. Guess that's just how it is when you grow up poor, you have to grow up fast. She paused for dramatic effect before continuing. I used to get bullied at school for not having nice clothes. No, I'm not saying who bullied me. You guys, don't start rumors, okay? I don't want to cause trouble. She smiled again, wiping away an imaginary tear. But honestly, I'm really happy with my life now. Thanks to all of you, I can finally afford to eat well and buy myself new clothes. A notification popped up on the screen, signaling a large donation. Wow, thank you to our #1 supporter for the rocket gift. Now I can buy 2 new outfits. That night, Michael Collins, who had somehow ended up as her #1 supporter, received a private message from Jessica. It was a selfie of her in 2 brand new outfits, accompanied by a playful emoji. Michael let out an exaggerated scoff. I don't even know what to say about this. I, too, found myself confused. Jessica had been given another chance at life, and this was how she chose to live it. To be fair, streaming seemed to be a profitable industry. But from what I remembered, the old Jessica had always cared deeply about her pride. If she had really been reborn, I would have expected her to invest in something more long-term, maybe even ride the wave of future trends. I had been half expecting her to make some strategic business moves, maybe even something worth investing in myself. But no, she chose live streaming. Maybe that was a rising industry too. After some thought, I bought shares in a few streaming companies. As for the rest, what did their choices have to do with me? I shrugged and said softly, this is the life she chose for herself. Maybe fate just wanted us to be different people. My academic performance was average at best. Before my national dance championship win gained public attention, plenty of people had looked down on me behind my back, assuming I was just a pretty face. Their thoughts weren't all that different from Jessica Carter's. Back in freshman year, I once ignored a boy sitting in front of me when he turned around to chat during class. I didn't respond, but somehow, I was the one who got scolded. The class monitor rolled her eyes at me and muttered under her breath, "Some people really have no shame. Instead of studying, they just flirt around. If you don't want to study, don't stare at me. What, do you expect me to make the first move?" I hadn't even been looking at her, but the malice was blatant. In school, people judged you for having bad grades. In society, they judged you for not having money. Then they passed that same judgment down to their children, raising them to think the same way. To them, there was only one path in life: academic success. If you didn't do well in school, your life was basically over. Maybe that was how they saw it. Most of the time, grades were important for students. In that regard, maybe they weren't entirely wrong. After all, academic achievements were still a form of accomplishment. But did that mean being shallow and judgmental was acceptable? I could only focus on myself and try not to judge others too much. The next time I saw Jessica Carter, she was at school completing her withdrawal paperwork. She looked at me in disbelief, as if she couldn't accept that I remained unaffected by everything that had happened. She had bought an autograph book and was asking everyone in class to sign their names, leaving messages and phone numbers. When she handed it to me, I heard her thoughts again. Ugh, why is Sophia Taylor still sitting in class like nothing happened? What are my fans even doing? They can't even get a proper hate campaign going, and they claim they want to stand up for me? Whatever. There are tons of future internet celebrities entering the entertainment industry. By the time Sophia debuts, I'll already be a senior in the field. Once Michael Collins writes his number, I'll put it away safely. Later, when he starts his company, I'll date him to get resources. Let's see how Sophia dares to compete with me then. I'll wait until she's at the peak of her success and expose how she bullied me in high school. That'll send her crashing down. I bullied her? I barely had enough time in my day for dance practice. Why would I waste it on bullying her? I frowned unconsciously, and the book slipped from my hand, falling to the floor. Jessica's eyes immediately reddened. She quickly picked up the book and clutched it to her chest before hurrying away. I'm sorry, Sophia. I shouldn't have bothered you. I know you hate me. It's okay if you don't want to sign. She turned to Michael Collins. Michael, will you write something for me? Any other guy might have agreed out of politeness. But Michael had never been like other people. He leaned back, completely relaxed, and lazily waved her off. Nope, if my dear Sophia refuses to write, that means it's definitely not something good. Jessica froze. After a moment, she hesitated before shoving the book back toward me. Then, Sophia, can you? I don't want to. Jessica's expression twisted in disbelief. Just now I was willing to sign it, and you refused. Now you want me to, but I don't feel like it anymore. I tilted my head slightly, meeting her gaze with a smirk. You already said I hate you. If that's the case, I might as well hate you for real. Otherwise, hearing you go on and on about it at school and online makes me feel like I'm not getting my fair share of the deal. Jessica's eyes widened, and this time, real tears welled up. She threw the book to the ground and ran off. So, all that, and if Michael didn't sign, the whole thing was pointless? I sighed and went back to my work. Even as a performing arts student, I still needed to meet the academic requirements. From behind me, I heard whispering. Someone was talking to Michael. Don't worry, Mike. The clarification video has already been uploaded. Hundreds of students testified on camera. Ethan Lewis's parents are at the peak of their public backlash now. They're finished. I hadn't expected Jessica Carter to be that bold. Bold enough to team up with Ethan Lewis and try to kidnap me. On the eve of my competition, I had taken a leave of absence from school to meet with my instructor. The moment I stepped outside, Ethan clamped a hand over my mouth and dragged me into a van. He glared at me, his expression full of resentment. Sophia Taylor, who do you think you are? Why do you act like you're so much better than me? His voice was full of hatred. So what if you're some big-shot dance champion? Do you know what you've done to me? His nails dug into my wrist. Because of you, the entire school has turned against me. They even reported my parents. Now, the whole internet is calling them leeches who exploit students for money. His eyes were bloodshot, his breathing heavy. Everything online about you has completely flipped. Even Jessica's account got banned. You're trying to ruin us. Are you trying to drive us to our deaths? He let out a breath and scoffed. There's no way you pulled this off alone. You must have latched onto some rich sponsor. His gaze turned sharp. Tell me, how shameless are you? I was speechless. Unable to hold back, I rolled my eyes at him. So now it was my fault that he clung to me like a parasite and got his income source cut off? No matter how good my temper was, I wasn't about to play the role of a nanny for these people. Of course, Jessica Carter's account was bound to get banned. Michael Collins never intended to let her make money off him in the first place. If you want to destroy someone, you must first make them lose control. Michael had thrown money at Jessica, making her believe she was really becoming famous. Just when she was at her most arrogant, thinking she had made it, he pulled the rug from under her. His family dominated the new media industry. Shutting down her account only took a single word. Jessica had been live streaming for over half a month, but she never had the chance to cash out. Now she never would. I wasn't the type to sit there and take a beating either. Without hesitation, I stomped down hard on Ethan Lewis's foot. He let out a sharp scream, instantly loosening his grip. I reached into my bag, grabbed my self-defense baton, and swung it straight at him. "You're insane." I narrowed my eyes at him. "Why can't I just be rich on my own? You can insult my looks if you want, but don't call me poor. My biggest goal in life has always been to carve out my own path and become even richer than my parents while doing it. Walking the road they paved for me? That's nonsense." I was sure of one thing. Jessica Carter's so-called past life only showed her a fraction of the truth. She saw my beauty, but ignored my relentless practice. She assumed that as long as she dated Michael Collins, she could surpass me. Even without her so-called past life memories, I was sure of one thing. I had Michael Collins wrapped around my finger, not the other way around. We hadn't even driven far before Ethan was caught. He wasn't exactly the type to stay loyal under pressure. Within minutes, he spilled everything about Jessica Carter. 2 undercover officers escorted us to the location, a half-abandoned building. Jessica had planned to push me off from here and make it look like a suicide caused by cyberbullying. But now, she was the one standing at the edge, laughing and crying at the same time. One foot was already over the ledge. "Why, Sophia Taylor?" she sobbed, her voice shaking. "Can't you tell me why? I know I'm not as pretty as you, but I'm smarter, I'm more hardworking. Why does the world only care about looks?" For a brief moment, I stayed silent. Then, I glanced at the police officer beside me. He was visibly tense, watching the situation carefully. He gave me a slow blink. I understood immediately. Shifting my gaze back to Jessica, I spoke calmly, drawing her focus toward me. "Sis, what you're saying is no different from a guy complaining that the world only values money. If you're struggling, don't blame the system. Maybe you're just not as great as you think you are." The officer beside me gave a helpless sigh and tugged at my sleeve, whispering, "I meant for you to comfort her. Get her to step down peacefully." I raised an eyebrow. "You're lucky I'm not sitting here eating sunflower seeds like it's a live show, and now you want me to console her?" Jessica seemed triggered by my words. Not only did she retract her foot from the ledge, but she suddenly lunged toward me, seemingly intent on attacking me. But before she could reach me, the officer swiftly moved, grabbing and restraining her in one swift motion. Pinned to the ground, she still refused to surrender, her voice raw with desperation. "You don't understand. How could you understand what it's like to be ordinary?" she screamed. "Do you know how much I sacrificed for that pathetic excuse of a man? I married him as soon as I graduated, gave up my career to wash his clothes and cook his meals, just so he could focus on his ambitions. Then I got pregnant, and what did he do? He locked himself in a room, jerking off to a photo of you." Her voice cracked. "You two weren't even in contact anymore. But he still couldn't forget you. Tell me, Sophia, what do you even have besides your face? Why were you able to become a celebrity? Why were you the one who married into a wealthy family?" Her body trembled violently, eyes wild with hysteria. "It's just a face, right? I can get plastic surgery. I can look just like you. Why won't you let me have even that? Why did you have to get my account banned?" Her words were so utterly ridiculous that they almost made my ears rot. I crouched down beside her so we were at eye level. "But wasn't he the one who betrayed you?" I asked quietly. "If you did all that for him, washed his clothes, cooked his meals, raised his kid, then at the very least, as a housekeeper, I would have paid you a salary. But Jessica Carter, in your past life, did you never meet anyone prettier than me?" I asked, my tone calm. "What exactly did I do to deserve being the target of your revenge? You didn't even try to ruin him. Instead, you spent all this effort trying to fulfill his lifelong wish, making him end up with his so-called first love goddess. If he was obsessed with my face, that was my misfortune. Even if I died, there would just be another unlucky girl after me. So why would you destroy yourself over a man who only cares about looks? Jessica Carter froze for a moment. Then she burst into wailing sobs. She was charged with attempted murder. The crime would stay on her record for life. The next day, I received an update from the police station. Jessica and Ethan Lewis had gotten into a heated argument in custody. Ethan had slapped her twice, blaming her for dragging him down with her. In a fit of rage, Jessica lost control. Right in front of everyone, she grabbed a potted plant from the police station and smashed it over Ethan's head. Before the officers could react, she had already pulled out a small knife and stabbed Ethan straight in the heart. He didn't survive. Jessica completely lost her mind after that. She kept laughing hysterically, repeating over and over again that she wanted to start over. But I didn't think she'd ever get the chance. I put down my phone and returned to my studies. The only thing that truly belonged to me was the future I worked for with my own hands. As for everything else, let it all fade with the wind.